Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned your subscription. You know, when it comes to doing fretwork on a guitar, from leveling to recrowning, dressing, and then polishing, the reality is it takes not only the right tools, but it takes some experience. There's a lot of muscle memory that's involved because of the repetitive motion when using a lot of the tools. And in order to do it correctly, takes practice and that ability to develop the muscle memory so that you're always effectively repeating those same movements. And as a result of this, there's an industry that exists to make tools for doing fretwork that are supposed to make the work a lot easier. And we see these tools, and in our mind we tend to think, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That seems logical. That would be a great way to simplify the process of doing the fretwork. And I'm talking about tools like crowning files, which I have several of, and fret dressing files. And then the one that I want to talk about in this video, and that is fret erasers. Like a lot of folks, when I first saw fret erasers, I thought, yeah, that's a brilliant way to remove the scratches left over from the crowning process and then bring the surface to a state where it can be polished to a shiny finish. And that's what it seemed like when I got them, and I thought, yeah, this would be a great way to do it. But as I started to use the fret erasers, and I used them for actually a couple of years on a lot of different guitars, I found myself going back to using sandpaper to clean up those tool marks. Now, there's several reasons why I'm not a big fan of fret erasers, and it's important to understand these reasons are my own personal opinion. Your situation may be different. However, if you're thinking about purchasing fret erasers, I want this video to maybe give you some food for thought before you pull the trigger. The reasons why I'm not a fan of fret erasers is, first of all, I fret all my guitars with stainless steel frets. And as you've probably heard from other luthiers on both the internet as well as in real life, is that stainless steel can be hard on tools. Now, in general, I have found that not to be exactly correct. Most of the tools that I use, like my 3-corner file and even my diamond-coated crowning files, they work pretty well. I don't have any issues with it. But that's also one of the reasons why I buy a lot of my tools from Stuart McDonald, because if they do wear out, which eventually they will, they'll replace them. No questions asked, which is one of the reasons why StewMac tools are more expensive. Anyways, that's a whole different subject. With the fret erasers, I just find that they don't work very well removing tool marks and scratches, the file marks, that are left on the surface of stainless steel. And I've tried using them, and I end up going back to sandpaper because I just can't get these fret erasers to clean up the surface. Even when I'm using the really coarse all the way up to the really fine, I can still see the scratches. And I look at that and I think, it's so much easier to take it out with just regular sandpaper. Now, when I say sandpaper, typically what I'm using is one of these wet, dry, waterproof sandpapers. This is made by Eagle Abrasives. It's their Kovacs brand. And after I've recrowned my frets, I'll start with about a 320 grit. Sometimes I might drop back to 220 if the scratches are really tough to get out. But I'll move up through the grits, 400, 600, 800, and I usually will stop around 1,000 grit, because from there I can polish the frets either with a buffing machine or with my Dremel and a small buffing wheel. Now, another reason why I don't like to use fret erasers is because as you're using the fret eraser and moving it back and forth across the surface, you're forming a groove which conforms to that surface. And if you're making a lot of guitars and each one is equipped with different size fret wire, that can be a problem because the larger fret wire is going to make a larger groove. And if you're not paying attention, that groove will lose contact with the fret wire, especially if you move from a larger fret wire size down to a smaller fret wire size. So to alleviate that and to prevent that from happening, you have to constantly be shifting to one of the other surfaces in order to get a fresh surface in which to work. Well, the problem with that is eventually every side of your fret eraser is going to have grooves in it. And then what you have to do is trim away that material to freshen that surface so that you can form new grooves. And you really don't know when you're losing contact until you look at it really closely. And sometimes you have to magnify the surface to see it. You'll start to see that the scratches aren't being removed. That's when you have to either switch to a different size or trim the eraser to get to a fresh surface in order to continue with the work. I find that to be just a pain in the butt. It's easier for me just to cut a small piece of sandpaper and sand it. And I'll cut fresh pieces for usually every fret with stainless steel. With nickel silver, you can go a little bit longer. But I just find it so much easier than to use these fret erasers. And as a result, these are sitting in the bottom of my toolbox. And I'm almost never using them anymore because I just feel like the sandpaper does a better job. And usually once I get up to that 1200 grit or 1000 grit to 1200 grit, when I'm using sandpaper, I can then switch over to a synthetic steel wool. Norton makes it, 3M makes it, and you can polish the frets up to a pretty high shine without even using a buffing machine. So I prefer using the sandpaper and then that synthetic steel wool as opposed to using the fret erasers. So if you're thinking about buying some fret erasers, by all means go ahead and purchase them, especially if you're only going to be making one guitar. However, just know that it really isn't any more cost effective, it isn't any easier than just using plain old sandpaper. Okay, so I hope you found this episode to be useful and maybe it will give you some food for thought before making a purchase. And if so, please consider giving the video a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, again, welcome. I hope I've earned your subscription. And as always, if you would like to help support this channel so I can keep making videos teaching you how to make guitars, be sure to visit eguitarplans.com and you can purchase a plan for building guitars and the tools that we use to make guitars. You can also purchase those same plans from my YouTube merch shelf, which is displayed below the description, along with some t-shirts. So until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for a future episode.